Run, rinse, repeat. Because running is an obsession. So we're into the final few days before Comrades, and can you believe it? So Anne has been doing a number of club talks. She did one this week for Century City in Cape Town. Anne, how have you enjoyed the club talk so far?
I've done 3 so far. I must say, I just really love engaging with runners and Comrades runners in particular. It's actually really difficult for me to talk about Comrades at the moment, which is why I wasn't on last week's podcast all about Comrades. I still feel a bit depressed about what happened last year, and it's no secret that I still wish that I was at Comrades and that I'd been given the opportunity to be the race director till 2027. But for some unknown reason, the new board has decided to proceed without a race director, and delegating those responsibilities to board members, which is strange. And yeah, has just kept Elaine on as the general manager. And yeah, I mean, just from what I've seen, I really do have to question, firstly, their motives for like deliberately excluding me. Like, I don't know why you would exclude me, especially when I was the cause of the change that got them all elected. But I also don't know why you would choose to host a race without a race director. And so I can only take it personally. Like, is there something personally wrong with me? Because there certainly was nothing wrong with my execution of the race last year. And so, yeah, it's really tough for me to be talking about Comrades and like trying to keep my love for Comrades alive when I'm just feeling a little bit grumpy and still quite upset with everything that's happened. But yeah, I mean, I'm just so keen to help people. And I do know a lot about the race from our 13 years of coaching, and especially from being race director last year. I know where every single water table is. I know where every single kilometer mark is. I just know the race now inside and out, and I think that that's really useful when giving advice to runners for this year's race.
And earlier this week, the batches were announced. It was quite a surprise to me. I found out via social media. I didn't receive an email, nor did I receive communication via their communication platform, which is very strange. I'm batched in the first group, but in B, the A batch is reserved for elites and age category contenders. So now we've got 40 to 49, 50 to 59, 60 to 69, and 70 plus year old age categories lined up in front of athletes that are between 3 and 2 hours 30 as qualifiers. So I think that's going to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it's actually in terms of World Athletics rules, requires you to have age category contenders in elite batch. But I think Comrades needs to pick, are they going to be World Athletics compliant or are they not? Because if you are going to be World Athletics compliant, you've got to comply with a whole lot of rules, which we know for a fact that Comrades doesn't comply with. And so you choose to enforce some rules, but not others. And this age category thing is one of those tricky ones where you're like, oh, is it necessary to actually enforce this World Athletics rule? I think that for the 40 to 49 age group, it's still possible that you could have elites coming out of that age category. But over that age category, it's extremely unlikely that those athletes would have satisfied the criteria for elite seeding.
And I've got a question. You know the rules better than anyone else. If we are doing a batch start at Comrades, like the 2 batches that we are doing this year, compared to the World Athletics rules, which would apply to things like the World Majors, surely those batches are a lot smaller because we've been in the front of Comrades, and the pushing that goes on when that gun goes off, if you go down, you're going to get trampled.
So look, I mean, David, we've run internationally, and we've even run in some of the majors. And it seems to be an almost uniquely South African thing. And it's one of the points that I deal with in my tip for runners. South Africans want to push and shove. We're an extremely impatient nation. And we also have no conception of personal space. So in the international races where we've been literally in the front of the race, just behind the elites, there's no pushing and shoving. People like might be bumping you every now and again, but like you're not seriously up close and personal, and it's just different. So the safety concerns are slightly different, but also the way that Comrades has traditionally done it, and I have no idea how they're doing it this year, is to batch people according to a time and then to measure out the size of that batch on the road on a per square meterage per athlete. And that's supposed to allow enough space for safety considerations. But with 2 minutes to go, those batches all open up and everything concertinas onto each other. And I think that this split start is trying to address that concertinaing. Maybe there'll be less pressure, but I can't see how the reasons given by the CMA for this batch start are valid. I can understand that safety at the start and concertinaing of athletes with a greater volume of athletes is a legitimate safety concern, and I'm 100% behind it. But if you're going to tell me it's to spread out congestion on bottleneck areas like Polly Short, that is not valid, because you're still going to be 10 people across going down the road over a set distance.
100%. I mean, if you've seen any images of the 12-hour buses that are running, they literally start with the people next to them and they finish with those same people next to them. So the congestion is going to remain the same throughout. You're not going to have spreading of athletes.
Well, what I think is really interesting this year, and I don't think there's been enough clarity given in the CMA communications. I mean, first of all, the athletes that I coach have no idea how the batch starting is going to work. So I'm very concerned for the start that there'll literally be 24,000 runners who don't know what they're doing. And who panic and behave badly, as what happened in 2023. And I think that unless the CMA very clearly communicates what is supposed to happen, and that involves additional communication because they haven't done it yet, there is potential for a crisis at the start. But what I think is even more interesting is how they're going to manage the finish. Because what you have now potentially is a situation where batch 1 runners have 15 to 20 minutes longer to complete the course than the batch 2 runners. So how is that going to be managed? Are they just given extra time, which some Comrades runners and the traditionalists are going to consider sacrilegious? Or are you going to have like a finish time, who's the service provider for the timing, trying to work out at the finish who gets a medal and who doesn't get a medal, which could be extremely confusing. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this all pans out on race day.
Lots to discuss there, but maybe we'll keep it for after Comrades when we know how the race went. Okay, so let's talk about your race day tips for runners. You did an online talk with Century City Athletics Club this week as their Comrades send-off, and I thought it'd be a great idea to give those 10 tips to our listeners. So number 1, nothing new on race day.
Yeah, like this is literally running 101.1. You'll hear Bruce Fordyce say this repeatedly. You'll hear me say it repeatedly. It comes up on Lindsay Perry's. So I think that this point is fairly undisputed. Don't try new gels that you haven't tested on your long run. No new make or model of shoes that you've never worn. No new sports bra you haven't tested over an ultramarathon distance. No new club vest that has a firmer or newer fabric. No new untested anything in the hope that it will make you look better on the camera or easier to spot along the congested race route. I remember that my friend Tolani, in an effort to make himself more visible to his girlfriend who was seconding him, suddenly put on knee-high striped stockings underneath his running socks one year and ended up with the most horrific blisters. Don't do that. Apart from your race number, fresh nipple tape, and the application of sun cream and Vaseline, which hopefully you haven't recycled, you should do nothing new on race day. Don't even try adding Vaseline or strapping to places you don't usually apply Vaseline and strapping. If there's something new you think you want to use on race day, the next 2 weeks are the time to spend trying it out And from 1 week to go, absolutely nothing new on the cards for race day.
Point number 2, pace your race properly.
Yeah, having had a look at the cutoff times adjusted for this year's race, absent a major race day crisis, I don't think that any runner who's adequately trained for this event is in any danger of not finishing the race. And that has been the indicated intention of the CMA. They want as many runners as possible to finish. And honestly, these cutoffs are so generous. I feel like if you really trained, you should have no difficulty. More than that, and as we've just mentioned, the further forward in the batching you start, the more time you actually have to complete the race. In an ideal world, you will run the race in even splits. So what that means is that you run the same time in the first half as in the second half. The undulating and slightly more hilly first half being evenly offset against your tired legs and Durban's heat and humidity in the second half. But a lot of runners underestimate the downhill. Take it from me that running downhill 60 kilometers from where you started stops being fun a few kilometers down the road. Far from it being a very easy freewheel into the finish, the last third of the race can be extremely painful and really jarring on your legs. If you've neglected your strength work and skipped out on the eccentric loading exercises essential for the down run, there is a high probability that you will cramp and may even be forced to walk down the back of the race's largest climbs. This is going to slow you down in the second half. Whatever you do, you should not start the race planning to get some time in the bank through halfway. There's no such thing as a time cushion for the second half. Every minute you run too fast through halfway will cost you 10 minutes or more in the second half of the race. It is far better to be more cautious in the first 45 kilometers and then use your still fresh legs to make up time in the second half than the other way around. Now, running more slowly in the first half of the race has 2 key benefits. Firstly, you will have time to fuel and hydrate properly, while you still feel like eating and drinking and your gels haven't yet started to make you nauseous. You are, as a fact, less likely to want to eat in the second half, and certainly the last third of the race. So make sure you use the easier portion of the run to get in as much nutrition as you can. Secondly, the slower cadence and smaller strides will reduce fatigue, which means you will be able to run longer and faster. If you race out of the blocks, striding down the hills with the intention of getting as much road behind you before you crash, when you crash, and you almost certainly will, your body will not easily be able to recover. Your quads will feel pup, your calves will cramp, and you'll probably also be dehydrated and running on empty. So you need to be conservative in the first half of the race. My first top tip for today for managing your pace is to run downhill with baby steps, as small steps as you can manage, particularly on your major descents such as Fields Hill. Try not to increase the length of your stride on a downhill from the length of your stride on a flat. This will help to reduce the amount of impact to which your quads are exposed and will to some extent assist you in managing your pace. Baby steps are critical on Botha's Hill, Fields Hill, Cowie's Hill, on the declines between Sherwood and 45th Cutting, and again on the back of Tollgate.
Tip number 3, avoid the red zone.
Yeah, this is a tip from our trail running days, David. We chatted about this on one of the earlier podcasts. For a race as long as Comrades, you really want your heart rate to be sitting in zone 2 and 3 for most of the day. Maybe when it gets hot and if you're running up the hill, your heart rate will go into zone 4, but only briefly. Never ever should you be at maximum effort, whether according to your heart rate or your relative perception of effort, RPE. The only time you're allowed to run balls to the wall is if you're about to miss a cutoff. If you can sprint the final straight of the race in view of the TV cameras, trust me, there are about 3 million armchair critics who are just going to say that you clearly did not run the rest of the race to the best of your ability. That's not finishing strong. That's just being a chomp. What you're really aiming for at the finish line of Comrades is what I call crying tired. It's when you are so emotionally and physically spent that the only response you're capable of giving once you've crossed the finish line is to cry. Tears of gratitude, tears of joy, tears of triumph, and often also tears of pain, combined with a deep knowledge that you have given your very best on the day. Having said that, don't ugly cry as you approach the finish line. The vast majority of your race photos will be taken as you approach the finish. This is when you want to have dry eyes, or at least keep your sunglasses on, and a big, clean, smiley face. If you plan on buying a record of this year's race, try to save your tears until after they've hung a medal around your neck.
So maybe those wet wipes will come in handy just before the finish.
Oh, you definitely need wet wipes. That salt, ugh, gross. Yeah, but honestly, don't ugly cry. It's going to ruin your race photos.
Tip number 4, strategic walk breaks are the holy grail, but limit your selfies to the start and the finish.
Gosh, I'm always amazed at runners who literally take a record of their entire race at Comrades. I mean, it's quite helpful when you researching the route because there's like at least 6 people who've chronicled their 12-hour race along the Comrades route. But gosh, I mean, I just think it's such a waste of time and energy. I used to think that runners needed to run from the start until they crossed the finish line. And then I started to participate in trail running, where honestly, it feels as though I spend most of the time speed hiking. In 2015, Caroline Bussman showed us that it's possible to win the race and still have a few strategic walk breaks. However, I need to emphasize that a strategic walk is very different to the kind of walking runners typically do in the latter stages of the race. In planning a strategic walk, you need to consider your goal average pace. As a rule of thumb, and assuming you've done enough training in the build-up to the race, are starting healthy, and have no niggling injuries, your goal time will be the time achieved in your qualifying marathon multiplied by 2 plus about 90 minutes. Women tend to finish between 60 and 90 minutes, and men tend to finish closer to the 90 minutes or more mark. Having now worked out your goal time and in turn your average goal pace over 90 kilometers, compare that goal average pace to the average pace of your very long training runs. If your goal race pace is 6 minutes per kilometer, but your easy long run pace was closer to 5:45 minutes per kilometer, it means you have a 10 to 15 second per kilometer surplus or cushion. Starting from as early as 5 kilometers, you should plan to use your surplus or your cushion as a strategic walk break. So with the above example, if you're banking 10 to 15 seconds per kilometer, by 5 kilometers, you have generated a 50 to 60 second surplus. That surplus then becomes the duration of your walk break. In other words, every 5 kilometers, you can walk for 1 minute. Breaking the race up in this way is a very effective way of ensuring that you are fueling correctly. Use your planned walk breaks to take on nutrition and hydration, giving the food an opportunity to settle before then trying to run again. Another option, particularly for the faster athletes, such as those going for a silver medal, is to bank your surplus for use on the steep climbs. For example, if you reserve your first walk break for the climb up to Ashburton, which is between 11 and 12 kilometers, you will then have 2 minutes to walk up the hill rather than pushing yourself into the red zone. This approach, however, requires very careful planning and the strict enforcement of a timed walk. It could mean that from halfway up a hill, you have to start running again, which is not going to be pleasant. If you choose to break up your run-walk strategy, I need to emphasize that any walking has to be a speed walk. It is not a leisurely look at the view, stop and take a selfie or 5 walk. It's the kind of walk you do It's the kind of walk you would do to the loo after sitting on a conference call for a full morning while chugging multiple cups of tea or coffee. Which brings me to a critical side note. Please step well off the route and preferably behind a bush before relieving yourself on race day. Guys and girls, there are eyes everywhere, some of which happen to sit in the heads of children, and they don't need to know what happens outside the confines of a porta potty. My second top tip for this morning, which is general and not strictly related to a run walk strategy, is to never, ever stop moving forward. No trips to the massage tent, no sitting down on a camping chair, no long queues for the plastic throne if you can possibly avoid it. Always be moving in the direction of Durban. If you have friends and family who are supporting you en route, let them walk with you down the road. Don't stop and socialize. This also applies to stopping for an Insta brag or a selfie.
And that brings us to the fifth most important point. And I will put 2 links into the description as well for you to watch. Point number 5, stay fueled and stay hydrated.
David, you and I have been coaching athletes for 13 years now, and without hesitation, I can say that the most common reason behind an athlete having had a bad race or not achieving their desired race result at Comrades is poor nutrition. Runners need to be consuming a minimum of 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. The range is between 60 and 90 grams per hour. Now, if you're using your standard GU, Science and Sport, or 32 GI gels, even your more expensive Morton or Beta Fuel, that's at least 2 gels per hour, potentially 3, because the gels have about 25 grams, maybe less, of carbohydrate per sachet. That's a lot of gel to be consuming, and it's really tough for your gut to handle unless you've practiced it. If you're being seconded along the route by family and friends, or if you are running with a hydration pack, supplementing your gels, so for example, 2 gels per hour, with liquid carbohydrates is a great way of ensuring that you consume as much as you need. So for example, 2 gels per hour plus 300 mils of a high carbohydrate drink. The only catch with that is that you're going to be needing to find a porta potty or a bush more frequently because you're taking on so much more liquid. In terms of hydration, I understand that this year there are 47 refreshment stations along the route. That's essentially 1 table every 2 kilometers. This means that you do not need to drink water at every station. Or if you do, you certainly don't need more than 1 sachet, certainly not in the first half. This is something I'll talk about in due course. It is critical that you drink according to thirst. Don't flood your gut, but also don't dehydrate. Small sips at regular intervals is definitely the way to go, which is another benefit of running with a hydration pack. As I've mentioned earlier, you're going to grow increasingly less interested in food and gels as the race progresses. So make sure you're getting your nutrition in early, from as early as 45 minutes into the race. Plan to consume your carbohydrates in liquid form in the second half of the race, as opposed to trying to eat a chicken mayo sandwich in Hillcrest. Real food and solids should be eaten sooner rather than later in the race.
Point number 6, carbo loading is no longer a thing, but it doesn't mean you must skimp on any carbohydrates pre-race.
Yeah, I mean, carbs is a hot topic. I don't know why, but banting is still a thing, banting, keto. And so increasingly runners are talking about eating biltong and, having drinks that have MCT oil in, for example. But the undisputed scientific fact is that endurance running, certainly while you're competing, requires carbohydrates. Carbo loading, however, is no longer a thing, not as we traditionally understand it. The old timers in your club are going to invite you to a potato and pasta party pre-race. And historically, these kind of meals have even been offered to athletes at the Comrades Expo. However, The developments that we've made in fueling and sports nutrition have altered our reliance on carbo loading because we're now able to fuel and take on board sufficient nutrition during the race. When you carbo load, your body not only takes on carbohydrate to store as glycogen, but it also takes on 3 times as much water in order to store that carbohydrate, with the result that runners feel bloated and are constantly excusing themselves to go to the toilet in the last 3 days. The sudden increase in water retention will make you feel slow and sluggish, exactly what you don't want to feel a few days before Comrades. It's going to make you panic. There's also a chance that the increased water levels in your body flushes out your salt and electrolyte balance, and that can increase your risk of cramping during the race. Now, when I was training for Comrades, David, you know that I could eat the whole fridge. Same as you, we would eat piles and piles and piles of food. And then I would have 3 donuts for dessert. All runners training for Comrades have built up an appetite as a result of the volume of training that they've been doing. Now, that appetite doesn't just disappear during your taper. If anything, I would get more hungry during my taper. And so if you then respond to your hunger in a natural way, naturally you will consume more than you are expending. Now, ladies in particular are like, oh, I'm not training so hard, so I'm going to cut down on my carbohydrates. No, don't do that. It is not okay to restrict your carbohydrates ahead of the race. Please don't do that. Eat exactly as you have been eating in training, in taper, and that includes eating carbohydrates. In the 3 days before the race, you can add a small quantity of additional carbohydrates to your daily eating plan. On day 1, eat 30 grams more carbohydrate than usual. On day 2, eat 60 grams more carbohydrate than usual. And on day 3, the day before the race, eat 90 grams more carbohydrate than usual. Men can increase these quantities by 15 to 20 grams per day. My advice is to avoid sweet things during your taper. So don't have the packet of sweets or the donuts or the chips or the chocolate. You are going to be so sick of the taste of sugar by the end of the race. It's better not to have that sweetness in your mouth before you even start. My third top tip for this morning is to have a rehydrate every day from Thursday to ensure your body's electrolyte balance is in check ahead of the race. Stay well hydrated during race week, adding a tiny pinch of salt to your water bottle in order to maintain that electrolyte balance and to avoid spending all day rushing to the toilet.
Point number 7, use the crowds. Just don't take food or drinks or water from them.
Yeah, I live for the crowd at Comrades. When you're running fast, their cheers carry you forward, the roar of their voices fixing a smile on your face and putting a fire in your belly. When you're sore and you're tired and ready to throw in the towel, their kind words, offers of assistance, and pats on the back could be the only thing that keep you moving forward. I recommend that runners make an effort to make eye contact with the crowd. When you do, they will cheer for you more loudly. They'll probably even call your name as printed on your race number. Respond to high fives, laugh at funny placards, say hello to children. Be the kind of runner who deserves to have someone sacrifice their Sunday morning lion to stand on the side of the road in the freezing cold or the blazing heat. Be the runner they talk about in a positive way when they get back to their house in the evening. Be gracious and thankful and positive. Runners need to remember that you have an opportunity on 8 June to inspire the next generation of runners, or to encourage a lapsed runner, such as myself, to return to the road. Don't be that grumpy old fart people wish had tripped over a cat's eye somewhere on Polly Shorts. However, as nice as the crowd is, and this was a query that I received as race director last year when a couple of runners experienced severe diarrhea in the second half of the race. Do not accept unsealed food or drink along the race route from the crowd, and especially not from children. You have no idea where that food or drink has been, how long it was there, or what else joined the picnic. If you want to avoid gut distress, best not to have a takeaway.
Point number 8. Greet Arthur Newton, either on the day or the day before.
Now, this is one of those tick boxes that runners just cannot afford to leave unchecked. Bruce Fordyce will emphasize this in his runs repeatedly. Last year, Toyota even made a thing. They had roses available for runners to drop at Arthur's seats along the route. I know that you tell your runners to do the same thing. And I admit, I'm a super superstitious person. Before every Comrades, I eat the same meal. I always have steak, potato, and salad. We always stay at the same Airbnb in Umhlanga. I always say the same prayer before I start Comrades, and I listen to the same hype song every single year. The other things that I do religiously are to drive the race route on a Friday and to place a flower on Arthur's seat. According to the legend, as you pass Arthur's seat, you need to doff your cap and say, "Good morning, Arthur," as you pass. And if you do that, you'll have a good second half of the race. Conversely, if you do not give the memory of Arthur Newton adequate respect, those last 45 kilometers are going to be pretty hairy. Now, in truth, I've had good races and I've had bad races, despite always going to visit Arthur's seat on Friday. But when so much else is left to chance on race day, I'd rather not have this oversight nagging me in the back of my mind. So just greet Arthur.
Point number 9. Don't tell people your goals.
Yeah, I know how every Comrades runner is getting asked about, oh, what are you going for at Comrades? What are you hoping to run? What time are you looking for? And runners will respond, oh, I'm going for sub 9 or sub 10 or whatever the case may be. And some people, like Fadestein, thrive on pressure. The higher the stakes, the more focused they become. Me, I like self-imposed pressure, setting myself up to achieve something. But I hate having the whole world watching me. For this reason, I recommend that you stay silent when someone asks you about your race goals. Just play it cool and say something like, oh, I'm hoping for a good race, but who knows, anything can happen on race day. Because that's the truth. Don't get trapped into saying, oh, I'm going for sub 9 or I'd like a silver. Don't. Just keep it quiet. It doesn't matter if you're feeling confident or if you know you've put in enough work to have earned it. Comrades doesn't work like that. Rather than putting all that pressure on yourself, quietly apply yourself to the task at hand, and then, when no one's looking for it, smash it out the park. This approach is far better than committing to something lofty, missing it, and then making excuses for yourself while out there on the road and after the finish. Don't do that. The race will play out whatever happens. Maybe you'll achieve your goal, maybe something will go wrong and you won't. But let that be between you, the road, and God. You don't need to explain yourself to anybody else. And unless you thrive on pressure, you'll be much calmer and happier for keeping quiet.
And you and I, we have a word, and it is palonki. And that simply means a jerk. Point number 10. Don't be a palonki.
Yeah, by now, people participating in Comrades, if they haven't figured out what is appropriate runner's etiquette, they probably never will. Just in case any one of our listeners have missed one of the basics in their runner education, here are a few things you should definitely not do on race day, or you risk being a palonki. Number 1, don't take more water, Coke, Powerade than you need. With 47 refreshment stations en route, as well as club and personal seconding, there is little to no chance that you are going to run out of water. As I mentioned earlier, you really need to drink only half a sachet per table, particularly in the early stages. So grab 4 and then drop them in the mud the other side of the refreshment station. Number 2, and this is something that really gets under my skin. Don't throw your sachets, cups, wrappers, empties anywhere other than a dustbin, or at least in the close vicinity of a dustbin or within the vicinity of the refreshment station. Okay, that's just common courtesy. If you drop these things further out down the road, someone's going to have to go after it and sweep it back. And what if they don't? It's just going to litter the route. Last year, I had residents in Hillcrest and all along the Camperdown Cato Ridge area phoning me the week after the race, complaining about the litter. I had to get 2 separate teams to get in there and clean because runners had just left such a mess in between refreshment stations. For the love of all that is running, please do not throw your rubbish into a bush or down a drain or behind something where it will never be found. This is not hard, people. Don't be a palonki. Third, don't push, shove, or run over the top of other people, particularly at the start. Every time I've started the race, I've had a gentleman from A badge so up close and personal that I thought we might as well be a couple. Absolutely no respect for personal space at all. Worse than that, when the gun goes off, I've always had to run for my life in order to avoid getting pushed or trampled. Unless you are starting the race in the very front and genuinely believe that you will be first man home from the gun, there is no need to push or to push past anybody. Seating batches are in place to ensure that people of a similar pace and with a similar goal time start together. So what's the rush? We all going to the same place in approximately the same time. Just relax. If there is a mess up at the start, and as we mentioned earlier, I'm fairly sure that it is going to be a complete dog show. Please don't panic. Don't get angry or aggressive and take it out on the runners around you. Everyone is in the same boat. The runner standing next to you is just as stressed and confused as you are. What you need to be doing is working together, treating each other with mutual respect. But if you happen to see a CMA board member, please feel free to lynch them. My fourth point, and related to what I've just said, is to help those around you. At the start, at the finish, and along the route. Race day is so much more than the attainment of an individual goal. It is a reminder of our collective humanity and a symbol of how far we've come as a country and a community. Sure, achieving a particular result will bring you personal satisfaction. But if you want a war story handed down to your children and grandchildren one day, being someone's race day hero is so much better. Make sure you start and finish the race with the true spirit of Comrades.
And these are fantastic pointers. I think that everyone can learn at least something from it.
Thanks, David. And I don't know if we'll release another podcast before Comrades. We probably will, because we're going to release an additional one next week, which will deal with top contenders and how I think the men's and ladies races are going to play out, as well as some final race day tips in terms of seconding, parking, etc. But for those of you listening in anticipation of the race, David and I really just want to wish you the best for your race. Remember to go out there and to thoroughly enjoy the experience. I remember running Comrades, and it is the single best day of the year for me, and I really, really hope that each and every one of you enjoy it.
Don't forget to check out the links for hydration and nutrition.
For help with your training, visit a-teamcoaching.com. Subscribe to our podcast and don't forget to run, rinse, and repeat.